All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Showverse. And today I have a very special guest with me. Today I have the writer and director of Portraits of Dangerous Women. I have with me Pascal Bergamin. Say hi, Pass.
Hello, Noah, and thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Oh, hey, no problem at all. No problem at all. Now, I have had the lovely opportunity to see Portraits of Dangerous Women. And one thing I will say is I love the dry British wit to it. I very much enjoyed a lot of the performances from your three main cast, and especially from the supporting cast of, Mark Lewis. But the story, for those of you that don't know, is about three women who kind of run into each other's lives after a road incident brings them all together. And, well, needless to say, shenanigans ensue. Without getting too much into the plot, as I would love for people who haven't had the chance to see it yet to go in blind, which thankfully I went in blind. And one thing I do got to say is I really love your direction, your writing, and the performances from Tara, Jenny, and Yasmin. Is that her name? Yasmin?
It's Yasmin, yes. Yasmin
Yes.
Monet Prince, correct.
Oh man, um now before I get into all that nitty gritty stuff, uh I do want to know how did you come up with an idea like this? Because truth be told, I would never have thought about, that like strangers coming together over like a car crash in a humorous manner. I would never have thought something like that. Where did the idea come from?
Well, the idea came when I picked up a photo book by Peter Cohen. He's actually an American collector of vernacular photography, and the book is called Snapshots of Dangerous Women. And I expected mugshots or actual female criminals or something like that, but instead it's a collection of amateur photographs um, of women doing, let's say, maybe some dangerous or unconventional things like climbing a lamppost, sitting in a tree, lying on a bullseye target, posing with a pistol. And what really struck me was the energy in those photos. They were playful, but also mischievous. And looking at these photographs, I just had this desire to connect these random women, to imagine a world or a universe where we could actually hear them, see them interact. And that's what really, so that was kind of the starting point. So I took these photographs to my co-writer, Stefan Teuwissen, and I said, look, it's not really much of an idea, but that's what I would like to do. And to my surprise, he was like, fantastic, let's start writing. And but I think what really interested me and Stefan was the relationships that could emerge from these characters, or the idea of what might happen when three very different women at very different points in their lives find themselves thrown together. And then just one thing led to the other. And in the end, we had a script.
I It's funny you bring that up because one of the themes that at least I took away from Portraits of Dangerous Women, and you also even just slightly touched upon, was that, these three women are all completely different from one another. They come from completely different backgrounds, different mindsets overall.
Yeah.
And I thought what was so fascinating for you to actually kind of portray is a subtle, I'm not even sure this was deliberate, but there was a subtle hint of some sort of commentary on art itself, because you essentially have um, all these women from different backgrounds, and they all come together over, art itself, particularly portraits. Hence, of course, the on-the-nose title. But I mean, did that just was that intentional, or was that necessarily something that like partway through filming you're like, oh my goodness, I have like this statement on art being a universal, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? But it's a matter of art has a way of bringing people from different backgrounds together. Can you touch upon that?
I mean, it's not so much. I think we're not going to spoil anything if we do tell people that those portraits, those photographs are in the film.
Hmm.
And Yasmin is kind of an aspiring art collector herself. So she's collecting pictures and then takes them to a gallery. And of course, there is a commentary on, are those found photographs, those amateur photographs which she collects, is that art or not? And of course, she then meets John, the gallerist, who's played by Mark Lewis Jones. And he kind of dismisses it at the beginning. He says, well, they're just random pictures. That's not art. And she sort of insists and says, no, I think it is. All I have to do is, and of course, that's also a bit of a joke. She says, I need to put them in frames. And once they're in frames, it's art. And of course, it's always about, as we know, just like with a film, when is a film a film? We could say, well, when it's 72 or however long minutes, then it qualifies as a feature film. But if it really depends in what kind of setting you put the film. If you watch a film on a phone, it's very different from putting it in a cinema. So it is about the space. Where is it shown? How is it shown? And there is that sort of conversation going on where she feels this is art because it means something to her, and that's kind of a theme that runs through the film.
And it really was interesting because I think, you had Ashley, Steph, and Tina. All of them have their perceptions of art. And if
Hmm.
I want to say something, but it's a spoiler, so I'll hold off on that for now. But one thing I really do want to say is how did you collect a lot of these photographs and portraits for the movie? Well, was it a very long and arduous process, or was this like you already had them on hand and you're like, I can make a movie out of this?
No, I had them on hand. So I contacted Peter Cohen, the author of the book. He had this collection, and he has, in fact, a really interesting and extensive collection of pictures of vernacular photography. It's quite well known in that world. So I called him up and said, look, I really like those photographs, and could we use some of them in the film? And in general, would you mind if we use that as sort of an inspiration? I mean, it's not, we didn't take anyone's story. We made the story entirely up, but I still wanted to get his permission. And he was very kind and very supportive and said, of course, you can use the photographs in the film. And they scanned them in New York, sent them over, we printed them out, and that's it. And then we put a few others in there, but generally speaking, they're all from his collection.
That's interesting. And I'm guessing he was a very pleasant man to be able to like have those discussions and like talk about like your story for the film. Like was he just kind of like, yeah, I'll help, or was he like a very like go-getter kind of on board, like say whatever you need, I'm in.
Very much so. I mean, I was quite, because it's quite unusual to get a phone call from someone saying, "Look, I discovered your photo book in in a bookstore in East London, and that's kind of the base of an idea I have, and I want to make a film. I thought, well, he might just say, who are you and what have you done? But he was very kind and very open, and he said, no problem, you can use whatever you want to use. And I said, look, we're going to keep you informed how we progress. Obviously, that was the very beginning of the writing process. And I don't, I think Peter probably thought, well, they're never going to make this film anyway. You get a call, someone saying, I want to make a film. And I would say probably I'd have to go back and check when I sent him the first email, but I would say, I reckon probably 4 years later, we finished the film, and now it will be available in the US, as you know, from July 10th. And which actually reminds me, I have told him that, but I haven't sent him a reminder that it will be out in the US on July 10th, which I shall do.
Oh my! I am so sorry. Right, everybody. This film does release July 10th. Please go check it out. It is, I think, well worth your money. It is. Oh right, I'll get into more of what I my thoughts on the film with you momentarily. But yes, go see it July 10th in theaters. Continue, Pascal.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. So we used his pictures. He was extremely, helpful. He had an assistant. God, what's now her name's Yara, who was very helpful as well. I probably got her name wrong. Sorry, but and it was just quite straightforward. We said, look, we're going to do this, and he said, no problem at all. Let me know if I can help.
You see, that I like to hear because this film is heavily inspired uh, by his work. So the fact that you were looking at his book and going, "Hey, I want to use your photos for this movie. Can you help?" Yeah, sure, man. Let's do it. I'm glad to help. I love that kind of collaboration and enthusiasm in film. It usually leads to a much more authentic and passionate project, which this
Yeah,
film very much so is. And
I agree with you, and I can add, I mean, it's really a very small independent film, and you know, every filmmaker will tell you that they don't have enough money to make their film, but we did this on a very tight budget, and but what it meant was that even in terms of locations, we went out and literally knocked on people's doors. The gallery, for example, we found this gallery in a small village in Sussex, and we kind of discovered it on Google Maps, and then went round, knocked on the door, and said, "Look, we're filmmakers. We love this space." And it had everything. It had the gallery, it had the living room, all the things we imagined in the script were there. And I said, look, we don't have much. We can't offer you very much, but we would be great if we could use your space. And they all said yes. I mean, whenever we approached someone, pretty much every location, it was us going around talking to people. And you're a filmmaker, you know how difficult that conversation sometimes can be. But some of the locations were dressed and we changed certain things. But I think all in all, we were trying to find those places that we had in the script, and we sort of found them pretty much all of them, within an hour's drive, which was perfect for us. Which mean, and they all became friends, and they became sort of part of the film, not in the sense that they were that they were in the film, but they really became part of the crew. These people, and that was quite wonderful. And I think you can see it on the screen. I believe there is something. Maybe I'm just imagining it. You might be a better judge to say whether that kind of comes through. But there was a sense of collaboration and communal support that I find made it onto the screen.
It's interesting that you do say that because that actually does lead into some of my personal thoughts as well as transitioning to cast, which we'll get momentarily. But you do bring up a point. There are a lot of the sets, the environments, even, which, by the way, Sussex was a beautiful location to shoot at, by the way. I was actually shocked by a lot of the outdoor scenes, but that's neither here nor there. But one thing that was you mentioned like this sense of like community in a way. You do feel it in a lot of the set dressing because sometimes if you have a film where you're like shooting on like either location or like just saying, "Hey, can I go check out your can I please shoot here?" You wind up removing a lot of the stuff that's in there because it doesn't fit the characters. So you wind up having this sort of void where it's like you see these characters on screen, but the world feels devoid of life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And like for example, when you guys like during all the school segments, you guys shot in actual classrooms, like in actual, and so I'm using that as an example.
yeah,
It felt like, despite the fact that you clearly had to shoot in an active school, you made the best out of your environments because every set here feels like it's a world that is being lived in. And for a story like this, which I won't say is necessarily plot heavy, this is more about the characters. This is more about who these people are. It's an examination
yeah.
of them, which I thought was really important. The world of the characters have to reflect the characters themselves, and never once does it feel, you're pointing at a screen and going, well, why are they shooting there? That doesn't make no sense. Then why get this doesn't feel like it would fit the character at all.
Hmm.
Every set feels lived in, and it feels like a brilliant reflection of the characters. Like even Ashley's workspace, was that just someplace you found, or was that like did you build that?
No, no, we didn't build anything. That was I think that was Denkuro. Denkuro was the DOP. That was his neighbor's house, and it's kind of an annex. But again, it was the perfect. We were looking for a small space that a young woman would rent or could afford, although to rent in this area, and it's very close to Gatwick Airport. And as you know, she's partially in the film. She's hard of hearing. I mean, she's lost her hearing on one ear. Again, that's not necessarily a spoiler.
No, no, no.
But the fascinating thing was that we got to this location, and of course, because Gatwick Airport is so close, you have airplane noise. And usually you would stay away from a location like that because the sound department would say, well, look, this is just too difficult. Can we go elsewhere? And I said to them, it's not a problem. We're actually going to have a lot of airplane noise in and around her house. I like that. I think that's fantastic because that's it doesn't really matter to her because she can't hear it, or she can't hear it as well as others. So she would move into a place like that. It wouldn't bother, let's say, it wouldn't bother her as much. And we were just filming with the real airplanes in the sky, and that just added some more. The school was also quite fascinating. We went to visit quite a few schools, and again, they were so welcoming and supportive. And we needed two locations at the school, two main locations. One was the classroom, and one is a toilet with a toilet they're decorating, which is, it's not an important plot point, but yes, there is a toilet. And I was kind of worried about that. I thought, oh God, where are we going to find, a toilet that we can pretend that they're decorating, which looks a bit tired and all these things, because So I kept on looking at the, which was quite awkward. I sort of kept on looking at the toilets as we were sort of going through those locations. And at some point, I said, when we picked the location, I said, by the way, have you read the script? And she said, no, I haven't had a chance yet. I said, well, we do need a toilet that is, or a restroom that is being repainted, decorated. And she just looked at me and said, oh, there is a loo here, just which actually we had to lock it because we're gonna refurbish it after summer, and we were just there before summer, and they had it locked because it was no longer safe for the pupils, so
Right.
they locked it. And I was like, oh my god, okay. So she opened it, and there it was, and we could do with it whatever we wanted because they're gonna gut it anyway and redecorate it all. But again, there was just call it a coincidence, but it was kind of obviously perfect, because again that would have been quite difficult for us to recreate, for budget reasons and so on and so forth. And it just worked out basically.
No, and I think a true telltale sign of a good filmmaker is learning to roll with the punches and learning to adapt with the story to your real world situations. Having
Yeah.
a patient by an airport. Oh, well, guess what? The character's hard of hearing, so she's not going to care, and ergo, she's there. Hey, do you know if
I mean,
we?
that was in the script. I didn't do this because that was already in the script. But there were other moments. There were moments that actually weren't in the script. There's some wallpaper in John's kitchen. John, the gallerist, played by Mark Lewis Jones, and I walked into that and I thought, I don't think John, our character John, would pick that specific wallpaper. It's a bit odd. So we made a joke of it. It's in the film. I'm sure you noticed that one of the characters comments on it, and it becomes a bit of a joke because so that's where we sort of adapted, where we were like, okay, how can we make use of something that isn't quite as we imagined it, because there is nothing else we can do.
Exactly. And like I said, adapting on the fly, learning to just roll with the punches. Now, I do want to move away from that and actually
Mhm.
bring up what I discussed a bit earlier, which was this is a very much character-driven story. These are about three women. And
Yeah,
I will say that you had the likes of like Tara Fitzgerald and Jenny Spark, and yeah, hold on, I need to make sure I'm not going to butcher this. Yasmin Monet Prince. So
exactly.
I'm guessing for a film like this, where each character has their own individual, like not only have their own individual personality, but they also have a very unique story that is played out. What was the casting process like, and did you already have some of these actresses in mind before you were shooting, or even when
Not at all. And I full credit goes to Matilda James, our casting director. It really she did an amazing job. I knew we had to find the right actors for this project, and of course you can say that about every film, but when you're not relying on plot to carry the film or action or something else, the casting really becomes everything. And I always said the film stands or falls with the cast. So we spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, um, mainly time, probably together with Matilda, um, to find every single woman. And it goes beyond that. It's also the supporting actors. And Matilda, just right from the beginning, she understood the tone of what we were aiming for, and she knew something slightly offbeat, but rooted in truth. And I would say she was really instrumental in building that world through the cast. And I didn't know. I mean, I was aware of of those actors, but I didn't know them personally. And again, they um, it's also unusual for actors of this caliber to join a small production with a relatively unknown director. So I always said, I as a director, I had to sort of uh, when we approach them, I would usually, they would read the script and say, okay, can we meet the director? So it was me auditioning rather than the other way around, and then go and talk to each of the characters, say, look, this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, and try and win them over. Most actors are quite open to independent films, small budget films as well. But I think the one thing they want to know is, okay, how are they going to work? How is this going to play out? And they want to hear from the director or the writers what the plan is. And so it was for us to convince them. But of course, it helped that Matilda had very good relationships with all of those cast members, and they trusted her. I think that was the first step, to be approached by someone like her who they trust. She's done a lot of work in theater and also film, so they all knew her. It was more about convincing them to then work with me, I suppose.
It's funny you brought that up, because this also goes into one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, which is, the inclusion of Mark Lewis Jones. Now, in America, he has been in films and shows. He was in Star Wars. He had a bit part, but he still had a standout role in that. He was at Chernobyl, playing General, I think, Picala or something, and he was in The Crown as I think Edward. He is relatively a very big bit player for a lot of productions, and he usually plays this kind of grizzled, like kind of like, no, pardon my French here, no shit taking guy.
Yeah.
He has this menacing look to him, very stoic. But in a very weird turn of events here, he is actually a very calm and very collected and very sweet old man in in your film. So I gotta know, what was it like getting him cast? What was the process arduous? What was the conversations with him like? And two, were you aware of this kind of typecast that he was in before casting him? And did it feel kind of, peculiar when, you explained to him that he's not playing some sort of grizzled, hard ass, but a very, intelligent and very sweet old man?
Um, to answer your first question, of course, I'm aware of what he usually plays, or the characters he usually plays, which is, as you say, it's a mix. It's either gangsters or, yeah, that kind of character. And I remember when Matilda brought his name up, I think my first reaction was quite similar to yours. I was like, Mark Lewis Jones. And it took me about, half a second before I was like, huh, interesting. And and I was like, yeah, I think I know I think, I can see what you're doing here. And I think it's very, very interesting. But then again, so we then approached his agent. We said, look, this is the reason we would like you to play this role. Would you please read the script and then get back to us? And he read the script, similar process. He said, okay, I want to talk to the director. And by that time, when I talked to him, he had already read the script and he knew what kind of role it was. I never really talked to him about why I mean, he liked the script enough, and obviously me enough, to say yes. And I think he really enjoyed playing John, the gallerist. I think, and he's a very, very generous. He's a very generous actor, and we needed a generous personality because I always describe the film as a four-hander. There are really four main characters: the three women and Mark, and he plays a very important role, and yet, of course, he's not one of these women, and the other thing I think that I was slightly nervous about was, how is he going to play? How is this going to? Because he sort of has most interactions with Yasmin, with the youngest of the cast. But I sort of worried, it's like, okay, there's always this thing of how is this going to? But you know what? I mean, I had nothing to worry about. Once we got them in a room for rehearsals, it was actually quite amazing. And as I said, because he is such an experienced, generous actor, it was no problem at all, and just a pleasure to work with
Oh.
him.
Oh, well, one, considering I am a pretty I love his work. Um,
Mm.
so to hear that, that once again, praise for me. I absolutely adore hearing that. Plus, to me, he seems like the guy who would just make a sweet uncle. That that for those of you that have seen the movie, yes, yes, yes. Round of applause. Thank you for getting that joke. For those of you that haven't, go watch it, then come back, and then you can say how stupid my on the nose joke was. But considering you were able to get him for considering you had a very tight budget, that was, it's about making the best use with what you have. And even then, with what you had such a great like main cast. What was it like? Like another big name, well, I guess you can call her a big name, is Tara Fitzgerald, who
Yeah.
kind of similar to Mark Jones, has a presence in America as well. She was in Exodus, Gods and Kings, and as well as Game of Thrones. What was it like working with her?
um it's just wonderful. I can't describe it any other way. Again, I think just like Mark, she is incredibly generous. She's incredibly dedicated, um, actor as well. So someone who, when she says yes to a role, she will be there to support you and give everything she has. There is no, yeah, that's basically what it is. And again, she didn't seem an obvious choice for Tina. Playing a caretaker in a school didn't, Tara Fitzgerald isn't usually the first name that comes up, I would say, for most casting directors. Um, but she is, she's very, I think all of them have, they're all the cast, each actor just brought the very unique quality and energy to the set. They're all very playful, but incredibly precise. And you just know they're not going to let you down. Quite the opposite. They're just going to lift all your material, and it's just very joyful collaboration with the entire cast. How they feed off each other. Just to watch them sometimes, and to work with these people, quite honestly, it was probably the best, 6 7 weeks um, of my life, because you sit there and you can't quite believe, what is happening. And yeah, that's all I can say. You just feel suddenly quite privileged, to work with a bunch of actors like that. And yeah.
Oh man, I gotta tell you, I can relate to that at least because, in a sense, as a director, your
Mm.
job is to help guide not just your actors, but everyone else, crew, to essentially execute the story, or rather the blueprints, that is the screenplay. And after a while, once you've gotten used to your cast, your crew, you fall in line to certain repetitions
Hmm.
your day to day, because essentially, you come in every day, it's clock in, clock out. But one thing that I noticed, and I'm not sure if you can relate, but sometimes when you have just a really good cast, you start to feel a little nervous because you're like, damn, like they are doing everything they need to the best of their abilities, and you start wondering, man, like what am I doing? Like why how am I able to like keep up with them? Like how are my skill sets going to match to theirs? Was there ever like a level of just like, damn, like I am surrounded by talent, and I feel like I need to start like doing more and more because sometimes, at least for me personally, honestly, this might not even be your case, but like, was there ever like a moment on set where you were just surrounded by your cast and you may have gotten a scene done? And you're just like feeling that level of wow, like I'm building something great. What can I what else can I do? Is there something else I can do more of? Like some along those lines.
I didn't have the time to worry about these sort of things. That's
Oh,
probably the truth. I don't want to sound arrogant, but you live and you work in your own little bubble and nothing else matters. I mean, what was important to me was that we had enough time on set, right? Not to spend hours tweaking lights and then shoot a scene in 10 minutes. I wanted it the other way around. And also, we didn't really do much improvising, which might surprise you. But most of what's in the film was on the page.
well,
Um,
I'm
but
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. Really?
yeah,
That there was no, 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 no. I'm sorry. I'm calling BS on that because some of the way these scenes flow is like it's way too natural. It sounds like how people would talk to one another, which by the way, just probably speaks to the writing capabilities here. So,
yeah.
proper to you, good man. But no, I'm sorry. I'm calling BS there. Are you saying that every scene here was rehearsed and performed as written? Because I'm having a very hard time believing that because it was natural. It was really natural. Oh my goodness.
That's credit to the actors and perhaps to some extent, yes, to the writers. But no, it wasn't a film. We didn't go. There is some improv, I would say, around the kind of the party scenes or where they're getting drunk.
Oh,
But I would say 95, not about numbers, but let's be generous. I would say 90% of what you see in the film is on the page. And I'm not saying that to take away from the actors. It's quite, I understand some people think, oh, the script feels quite random, and it is. These characters do random things, but it's actually quite, yeah, it's we were quite precise about these things. And I think that was the difficulty to kind of to stay playful but precise at the same time. So, and I think what I wanted to say is I wanted to give the actors the space and confidence to try things. And when I say try things, not to kind of improvise, that's completely different, but try things how they deliver. Um, and that was important to me, and to be brave in those moments, and for that you need time, and I wanted to give them time to be able to do that. And I think that's also something they really enjoyed, because it's rare these days to be able to do that, and that's not necessarily related to money. That's a choice you can, or to your budget. That's a choice that you make. But if you work in TV, I mean, the schedules are absolutely brutal. They shoot, and they have maybe one or two takes, and then they have to move on because the schedules are so tight. So I wanted the opposite of that, which meant we had to compromise, or let's say Dankuro, the DOP, had to compromise in terms of lighting. He had to keep things simple, and to his credit, he agreed to do that. He said, okay, I understand how you want to work, and that's important to you, and I support that. And that takes a confident cinematographer to deliver on that. But I'm happy to share the script with you so you can double check what's on the page and what's in the film. But I'm pretty confident. Yeah, but it's I'm not against improvisation, but this wasn't the kind of film where you could improvise. Having said that, there is still, there's so many ways in how you can deliver things. There's a lot in the pauses, the looks, um, but as I said, I think, yeah.
And I'm sorry for the rather brashness of that statement,
That's
but
that's okay. You're not the only one.
it's so, these days in every movie, there's always that one little trivia. Did you know they improvised this? And it's to see a film like this where there are times the dialogue just seems it's like having a conversation with someone in the spur of the moment and you're trying to think on your feet. There's a lot of those moments here, and to find out that these were just very well rehearsed, well written scenes. I think it speaks to the credibility and to the tone of the film, which this is meant to be characters. These are meant to be people, and it has a very natural back and forth at times, with the exception of those nice quirky moments, especially at the police officer, which that's not a spoiler or anything. I do think that you and your team have really crafted a very interesting, character piece here. And I would highly recommend all of you to go check out the film July 10th, you said? July 10th in America,
July 10th.
um,
Yes, that's
in,
correct.
in cinemas. Now, I do have just a couple more questions for you. This is not
Oh,
necessarily about the film. This is more about you. Now,
okay,
what I like
go ahead.
doing is, with every director, there's always you put so much of your time and effort into a project, but of course, this is your job. Like once you're done with one, you have to move on to the next. Is
Hmm.
there any upcoming projects from you, that we should be looking out for and keeping our sniffers? Ah, yes, this is a Pascal Bergamin project. I must watch it right now. Is there anything coming up that we should be looking out for?
I'm afraid not right now. No, I'm kind of, we're still, uh, again, on a small project like this, uh, as a director, you're involved in also in with the release and a lot of things. You're wearing so many hats that it doesn't end when the film finishes. You keep working on it. Of course, I'm developing new work, but I know it might be hard to believe, but this film, although we released it in the UK last year, is still keeping me somewhat busy. But yeah, but always, and writing takes time. So some people write really fast. I don't, probably not as fast as I should, but and then once you've written something, I mean, I'm close, but then you have to go through the financing and all that sort of stuff, and it just takes a long time, especially in the world of independent cinema. It's yeah, that's how it is. But I'm not complaining.
Of course not. You should. I mean, you get to do something that so many people wish they could do, but they just never either have the right resources or the right skill sets
Mm.
to actually achieve it. For goodness sakes, I'm trying to make a short right now. We got one day of shooting done on Monday, and we have to wait about a month and some change before we can get everyone back together. The fact is, and I do have one more question for you. That's more of a fun one, but I actually wanted to bring it back a little bit. You
Mhm.
said you actually got this done in about 6 to 7 weeks, which is that true? Like in terms of shooting, let me rephrase
We
that.
had we had we had 25 days of filming. but we
Wow.
did 5 day uh, 5 day weeks, as in, so that 25 days is 5 weeks, but of course with two days off. Yeah.
Of course, obviously. But the reason why, I was a little caught off guard by that statement is I have talked with a lot of other directors, writers, producers within the independent film world. And usually, if you're not able to secure that level of finance, it's more of an ongoing in sort of a ironic sort of sentiment. Instead of taking a picture, which is kind of what you did, they instead have to treat it like a painting, where over the course of sometimes months to years is how they are able to complete one project. They shoot parts of it
Mhm.
perhaps sometime in October of, let's say, 2021. And then they have to wait until March of 2023 before they can shoot the next part. So
Mm.
um, I think, considering how many times I've heard that story, I'd say, Pascal, you got a little lucky in being able to,
I
shoot.
totally agree. I wanted to say to you, I mean, make being able to make a film is also there's a lot of luck involved, and yeah, it's not just hard work. We have to remember that. I know a lot of very, very talented filmmakers who never get the chance to make a film. In fact, I think there's quite a few out there who are way more talented than me, and for whatever reason they never get a shot at making a film. So I do feel not only lucky but also privileged. But once you get a bunch of people together like we did, and a cast, you kind of have to do it within 5 to 6 weeks. It would be impossible to kind of split it. I've made my first feature film a bit like that, where we shot something in December and then continued later on. But in this case, this would have been impossible to get it done. And then I think budget it's about, you have to prioritize. How I think it's incredibly boring to talk about money and budgets, but often because it's also a little bit meaningless. If I would tell you how much we had, it doesn't really say much, because it depends how you spend it and what you spend it on, etc., etc. And it's quite complicated, and I find often even filmmakers don't quite understand um, what it means. But for me, I wanted 25 days, which you might also argue is quite a lot. Most people probably shoot an independent film in 15 to 16 days. So 25 days almost seems like a luxury. And but in order for us to afford 25 days, I said, okay, we're gonna work with a very, very small and nimble crew. No more than 16 people, I would say, in total. And that's the way to do it. So it's, and every film is different. And I often feel like it's not even, I can tell you how we did it, but I'm not even sure if I can repeat that on the next film, or if I want to repeat it. It's just how this was set up. And I think you have to look at each project and say, okay, that's what's important to us. This is how we can do it. These are the resources, human resources as well as financial resources we have available. How do we best make use of them, I think.
No, and honestly, you are right. It's every filmmaker, even if it's the same guy making, multiple projects, every project is going to be a little different. You might get more money on one, you might get less money on the other. You can
Yeah.
never treat every project of it as if it's going to be the same. And look, as much as I would love to talk to you about, did you use Excel spreadsheets to help, break down the finances of what money goes where, you are right. At the end of the day, there's no point in really discussing those things. It's about the talent you have behind it that is able to justify the costs and the means of that kind of production. But I guess moving away from that, My final question for you, because I've already taken up a little too much of your time already,
It's
which,
okay.
by the way, thank you very much for. It's the question I like asking every director because when you're a filmmaker, when you know you like to write and direct, there's always a white whale that you have that lingers in the back of your mind. Do you have like a white whale, a dream project that you're just like, man, if I was given a blank check, that's what I'd make? And if you know, if you have one, great. If not, and you're just I want to take it one day at a time, that's perfectly understandable.
I don't. I don't really. There isn't something. No, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Oh,
You know, there are lots of projects. You know, you always have more than one project in development, of course, and there is I would even go there. You know, there are certain projects that are very close to my heart, and I know that are probably will be difficult to get made. And if someone would write me a blank check, um, but no, no, not as such.
hey,
Sorry.
that's perfectly fine, you know? Every director's different. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, you're just a matter of, look, I just want to create, and, you know, if and when I get to it, I get to it. There is really nothing wrong with not having an answer to that question. But what I will say is your film, Portraits of Dangerous Women, is, I think, a must see for the viewer at home. It is. It really is. It deals with art as well as tragedy, and I think it is well worth your time and well worth your money to go see it releasing on July 10th in theaters, which will be in about ah 8 days. But
Not long. Yeah.
um, Pascal, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come speak with me. It has been an absolute treat getting to actually discuss this film and just film in general with you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Pascal, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Noah.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching.
You can check out our website for all the content we produce.
Clicking all those YouTube buttons makes it so you see more content from myself and the other amazing creators at Kai's Corner Productions. All donations help us produce more stuff like that for you.
See you guys in the next one. Peace.